November 25th, and it's the day before Thanksgiving.
That's right.
And we're very thankful.
Well, this is Thanksgiving.
Hmm?
No, the day before Thanksgiving, you're right.
Here it is.
Yeah.
Thursday is
Yeah.
Thanksgiving, okay? So, this series, I'm not sure what to call it, Frank. What do you want to call it?
I think it's just your notes on
Notes on
a particular passage of scripture.
Notes on a particular passage of scripture. Well, let's say commentary notes.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. And Frank requested that I start in Genesis, so I don't know how far he's going to want to go with this. He's the one that's in charge of this. So today we are going to start with Genesis 1:1, and you can sigh and say, oh, we've heard that over and over again. But it doesn't hurt to hear it over and over again. Just like I just finished listening, and it's not finished yet. I was listening to Rush Limbaugh, and he's going to give the Thanksgiving story.
Oh, yeah.
And he said this is the one that's real. He's researched it. He's written a book on it. And we go through this every year.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because it reminds us of where we've come from, why we've come from that point. Well, in the beginning...
Well, this is why we do Passover every year.
Right.
Tell the story of coming out of Egypt every year.
So this first verse in Genesis 1:1 is one of the most important in the Bible.
Yeah.
Because
the basis of everything.
It's the beginning. It tells where we came from. So I have a Bible that's on my computer. It's done by Dennis Prager, and it's called the Rational Bible.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'm not going to give all of his comments, but I might refer to it once in a while. What I want to do is give my comments from various people that I've heard from.
Right. It's 11 hours.
And how I've thought about it. And so he says, in the beginning, God. Let's not go any further than that because there's a lot in that part. He says the creator of the universe means many things. But he thinks that one of the most important things about it is it shows ultimate purpose. We can get to that through this. The word God here is Elohim, and everybody knows that's plural. But God says he's one.
Yeah.
So what it means to me is there in the beginning, before anything's made that we call things, there was no thing, only God. And he is no thing.
Another way to say it is nothing.
So we say everything's made from nothing, but it means he existed as not a thing. Now, I just looked in my dictionary at nouns on the first page. Half of them are things that you can't see. Half of them, approximately, were things you could see. So, like abduction. If you actually saw someone abducting someone, you could see the action and know that thing exists. But if you just say abduction, you can't point it out unless it's being done. But basically, there are many verbs that you can't see at all.
Yeah.
Why? Because in this God, one God, everything that could exist was there as nothing.
Wow. Yeah.
So let's start with him. What did he have that was supreme? He had a throne. A throne probably is the first idea of God over all things because he is supremely in charge
Yeah.
of everything that he's going to make.
Right. There's nothing else that could be in charge.
So you have to have something that recognizes rulership or somebody in charge, orchestrating and keeping everything going properly.
That sounds like government.
That is the beginning of government. So we have to look at government through his eyes. And no, he doesn't have eyes like you and I do.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
We have physical eyes, but our seeing through our physical eyes is limited to physical.
Mm-hmm.
The ones that have had an out-of-body experience or a near-death experience talk about not having a body but seeing everything.
Yeah.
Also, that means a nothing can see. Something that isn't a thing anymore can see, it can hear, it can speak, but it doesn't use the facilities that we have. So when we say Elohim, and Elohim had everything, every idea, everything that could be created, every person. And if every person is not a thing before they become a thing, then you and I are eternal because it was all there in God. And what's done with that eternal being is up to him.
Yeah.
So he could say, I'm Elohim, here in the beginning. Oops. And he's including everything that he can make and that can be in him that can live. He's eternal. That means I'm eternal. Because I'm part of him in a way that no other thing is. Because I can be nothing with and still be there.
Yeah.
Is that hard to understand, Frank?
I think I get it.
Well, you see, we're
I know
so
physically, if we're, I mean, even all through the Bible, it talks about spiritual sight, that
yeah.
we don't always, it's not always using our physical eyes. What we see with our physical eyes is really just part of all creation, and it's not the perception, it's not the eyes of faith, it's different than that.
No, and I like to put it this way. When I see Frank, I'm seeing his address because he has been limited to a certain sphere because he has a body. But you have the body doesn't have you. The body is just a thing.
Yeah, it's a house.
It's a house. So Frank has a house, and that means he has an address. And somehow or another, to contact Frank, I have to find that address.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have phones to get to that address. And so we hear a voice, though we don't. So that's something we hear, but we don't see. Although they've made some phones that way too.
Yeah.
So God doesn't seemingly have an address. That's our problem with connecting. Because of our having an address, a physical body, we think, well, I want God to have a physical body, so I can go and knock on the door and say, I got a petition. But in Proverbs, there's a verse that says there's someone that's closer to us than a brother.
Mm-hmm.
There's only one person that can be closer to us than a brother, and that's God.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's on a throne. He's in charge of everything that he has made because it comes from him.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to then think. I'll talk more about God when we get to some other scriptures in Genesis. But so we want to go on to in the beginning.
It's interesting that it's Elohim and not Yud Hey Vav Ke.
Yes, that's right. There is a verse in Genesis soon, I think, that has both.
Okay.
So it identifies. He gives himself a name.
Because you'll probably explain later how that Elohim is used of all kinds of things. It's used of,
Well,
of idols. It's used.
I'm going to say right here off the bat, because we established that the first thing that's established is a throne. God is a ruler. And that was the first meaning of Elohim, a ruler.
Okay.
And it gets used in ancient times.
Oh, yeah.
The Elohim were the judges or the
Yeah.
rulers.
Yeah.
So this is how we get to someone like Caesar calling himself God.
Yeah.
They're thinking in terms of the supreme ruler over this nation or whatever he can confiscate.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what that word means. It means ruler.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason it's plural is because God would have many rulers under him.
Mm-hmm.
And they were all in him before there was anything. In the beginning, God created, or now this is a word I want to explain here right at the beginning. Verbs in Hebrew are not final. In other words, it's not, I'm doing this now, but it's now I moved on to the
In other words, it's not a completed thing.
it's never completed in Hebrew. So a lot of Hebrew translators for this word will change it into when he was creating, or he was God in the beginning. God was creating. They try to find other ways to show that creation is not completed in one moment,
Right.
and now it's past.
Right.
And the word create.
Don't some say that it take the Hebrew to say that that God began creating, something like that? Or?
When God began creating, yes, some of them say it that way too. Mm-hmm. There's purpose in God, and that which we mentioned before.
Of course, there's a difference between
between
in the beginning, in other words, the very first thing was the creation, or that he was just started to create. You know, I mean,
in the beginning, it was at first. There's a first time that God begins to start creating everything that's within him that he wants to be in a physical form.
So this was the first time and the first thing that he created, or something, I guess.
Yeah. So actually, we see we're thinking about things now instead of no things. Mm-hmm. The no things were already in him.
Yeah.
And some people talk about that being created too. The ideas we have of love, giving, a lot of things that are not visible. Mm-hmm. Forgiveness. These are the first things that were created. Well, those things were in him.
Yeah.
He is the God of love. He is God. All of these positive things are in him. Mm-hmm. So to begin creating means to bring forth something. And he is so wonderful. But who would know it?
Yeah.
How can anything be known about him if there isn't an other?
Yeah, maybe he was lonely.
I don't know. That is an uncreated thing that exists, mm-hmm. But it's because he exists, all positive, and everything else that is negative reflects that it can be with it can be other than him.
Yeah. But
So,
there had to be a reason why, of course, getting a little bit of ahead, but why he wanted these man creatures who would on their own decide to honor him and worship him. You know, I mean, that was the need he had, or
actually, that is jumping quite a bit ahead. But that is the reason that we have a beginning of things,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
his focus is going to be have somebody that can share the beauty of
Yeah.
love and mercy and forgiveness and joy and
Yeah.
peace and all this sort of thing that is
I
existing.
don't think we appreciate the fact that he decided to create us, make us in the image of himself. You know, I mean, that's amazing.
It is.
And we'll get to that later anyway.
Yes, we'll get to that. So this beginning. Now, what did God have to do to make something that was other than himself?
Mm-hmm.
If he is no thing, then he has to make something
Mm-hmm.
which comes from him but is not him.
Yeah.
So that's the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
That's the beginning between no thing at all and something. That's the beginning. And it comes about because God is creating.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Jews like to talk about this, and they never can come to solid conclusions about this no thing becoming something. But we call that Zimzum is a word they use to talk about how God retracted some of himself, which is a spirit realm, in order to make the place, which they call Makom, and that's another name for God.
Yeah.
And it's almost empty of him, not completely. It couldn't be completely. He can't non-exist. That would be weird.
Mm-hmm.
But it's emptied enough of himself that something can come forth and not be swallowed up, you might say. It becomes that the thing that comes forth can exist without being destroyed. Well, yes, because like David and Solomon said, if you came into this world, we can't hold you. He can't be held inside this makom, the place. Yeah. And he knew that. He deliberately made something that he couldn't be completely in.
Yeah. Well, this is another issue about people misunderstand when God came into the temple, you know, with his presence in the temple. That's not all of God in the temple.
No, it isn't. It couldn't be. But boy, it really rattled the doors and shook the foundations, didn't it?
Well,
it burned up the sacrifice.
That's why on the mountain they couldn't just, you know, just decide to wander up there, you know, because they'd be killed, because of just that touch with who God is enough to destroy everything.
And he's the one that sets up that that mechanism.
Yeah.
People running all over the place now. Muslims up there with their backs to the place where the temple were, praying to Mecca, towards Mecca. So it's a desecration to not acknowledge.
How can you allow that? I don't know.
That's mercy.
Yeah, boy.
That's mercy. Because of our stupidity, he's merciful. So anyway, so then he's got the space, all right? Now, what does he do in the space? Well, this is where the scientists say there's a Big Bang. And what does the Big Bang do? Yeah. It begins things. These little sparks of energy go out and become waves, and then they become matter. It's a very... The scientists can talk about energy becoming matter. Einstein's theory kind of almost puts it in a nutshell. So that's how we get a beginning. That's the way I look at it. And I keep losing my Bible here. Now, he created, it says, the heavens and the earth. Heavens, when we look out from the earth, everything else is heaven. But I think there's a spiritual component here. Before he made mankind, I believe he made angels, people that were going to serve him from his throne. He made them into energies that could be seen as light. So they could flip from one thing to another thing and do what he wants. But they were...
Is that included in heavens then?
Yeah, I would call that inclusive in the heavens. And of course, the heavens are also being made. But I wonder if the heavens are first these angels of light that do his bidding, because it talks about that in Psalm. You know, the angels of light. These things like thunder and all kinds of stuff that we can't actually see. Sometimes we can hear, we see it, but they can be made into a body if God wants them to visit us and talk to us and carry a message. But these are not beings that have a will of their own.
Yeah.
They're doing the bidding of God in his holy throne. So that I include that in the creation of heavens.
Okay.
But it also means all the matter that is floating around out there in the space beyond our earth. And a couple of science books that we've read recently, I've read several. One is from Baden, Greg Baden. Another is this recent one that we had. What is his name?
Nathan Abiezer.
Yeah, he talks about this light that was the part of the Big Bang and how it got clouded by the stuff that's sort of like the fallout.
You might explain. He's a physicist.
He's a physicist. So we had light, then we had darkness, and these... he even goes into how before God could even make a man, all of this stuff in the heavens had to be created, and you start out with 3 elements and it becomes more of that as the energy slows down. And man has all kinds of elements that weren't in the earth as it first formed. The first formation of the earth had only a few elements. So he talks about how this dust from other things came into the atmosphere and were sucked into the earth. This created more elements on the earth. All of this has to be done before a creation like he's made us can be made.
All the plants and animals and everything.
Everything is... and he goes way into how what God had to do to make a perfect environment for the physical life that we see on the earth to exist. And it's really remarkable. So that's what we've got in creating the heavens. It's part of getting ready to make the earth habitable. Now it says, and the earth. Yeah. Earth is part of the heavens, but the earth is special because it was being made to be a special place for this human being and the animals and plants that he was going to put here.
It's a very special place. There's no question about it.
So this in some respects is the first Thanksgiving. But I'm thankful for the beginning of America. It was people fleeing to have freedom of expression. And to manage that freedom and to keep that freedom requires a lot of attention.
And the Jews came out of Egypt to have freedom.
That's right. And they have to attend to that too, or they lose their freedom. And one of the ways they do it is by having these remembrances like Passover, Sukkot is the Feast of Tabernacles. Wow, they remember how they lived in the desert, and the festival of the spring harvest and the fall harvest, and then they also do the moons because the moon gives them their time.
Yeah.
The sun and the moon gives time. Now they're not supposed to worship those items, but they're supposed to acknowledge a new moon. Another month has gone by. They know that the planting and the harvest comes by these moons. So,
Can I tell a story?
yeah, you can tell a story.
The Firewall people, when we left the village, wanted to know how long we'd be gone. And they had the only thing they could go by was moons. So they took a piece of
String.
well, not really string, but just a strip of bamboo
Vine.
or something and tie knots in it for every moon. And every time a moon went by, they untied it. And when the knot didn't have any more moons, they knew we were coming back.
Yeah. And they said they knew we were coming back because they assumed we were going to keep our word.
Yeah.
So that's a good story to end on, and we'll take up the next verse after this one. I think we managed to talk enough about it. You could go on for hours on this first verse, but we don't want to give all the implications.
Just mention to them too, if they have questions, they should let us know.
Yes, if you have questions, send it primarily to the email address.
I can put that on it.
Put it on the one that you send out. Frank's the one that sends this out to people, except I have 2 friends that I send it to. And if it doesn't get to anybody else, it will get to those 2 friends. So have a good Thanksgiving, and we'll talk to you next time.